After David left, Mike voiced his dissatisfaction to Prisca, criticizing her parenting skills. He accused David of being rude and disrespectful. Tony, her colleague and partner, observed her unwavering dedication with admiration, constantly inspired by her ability to excel despite the challenges of single motherhood. Once upon a time, in a bustling city, there lived a beautiful lady named Prisca. She was in her 20s and lived with her 6-year-old son named David. Prisca worked in an advertising company as a strategist. She was known for her hardworking nature and her diligence. Every morning, Prisca would rise up with the sun, bustling about her cozy apartment to prepare breakfast for her son David. She would gently wake him up, bathe him, and help him get ready for school. With a loving smile, she packed his lunch before whisking him off to school, ensuring he was punctual and prepared for the day ahead. At work, Prisca immersed herself in her tasks, focused and determined. She impressed everyone with her creativity and dedication. Her colleague and friend Ruby admires Prisca's ability to juggle work and motherhood effortlessly. "You're amazing, Prisca," Ruby would often say, her eyes full of admiration. After the workday ended, Prisca eagerly picked up David from school. Their reunion filled with laughter and hugs. She took him home, where she would share stories of her day over dinner. Prisca helped David with his assignments and patiently guiding him through any challenges he faced. Weekends were cherished by Prisca and David. Whether they spent it together, enjoying picnics in the park or exploring the city, their bond only grew stronger. If Prisca wasn't indulging in quality time with David, she would be found working on her laptop or shopping to restock the home. Prisca treasured her role as a mother above everything else. David was her pride and her joy, her reason for pushing herself to be the best version of herself. "You're my inspiration, David," she would always whisper as she tucked him into bed every night, her heart overflowing with love for her son. At work, Prisca and Ruby were an unstoppable duo. They collaborated seamlessly, their minds buzzing with ideas and strategies. "What do you think of this approach, Ruby?" Prisca would ask, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Ruby nodded in agreement, their friendship strengthening with each successful project. Their colleagues admired not only their professional prowess, but also the genuine bond they shared. "Prisca and Ruby are like two peas in a pod," someone would remark, watching them laugh and brainstorm together during lunch breaks. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Prisca's life was filled with love and laughter and purpose. She was a beacon of strength and inspiration to all who knew her, especially to her beloved son David. Prisca's boyfriend Mike was a handsome and successful man who doted on her. However, her friend Ruby harbored reservations about him, finding him to be overly arrogant despite her concerns. Ruby never voiced her opinions directly to Mike, choosing instead to confide in her friend Prisca. Whenever Mike visited, David, Prisca's son, would retreat to his room. He found Mike's presence intimidating, as Mike had a tendency to raise his voice over minor mistakes and lacked the joyful and playful demeanor that David enjoyed in others. On the contrary, Ruby was a ray of sunshine whenever she visited. She showered David with attention, bringing him toys and engaging him in conversation about his day at school. David adored Ruby so much and felt comfortable in her presence. One day, as Mike entered the apartment, David instinctively moved to leave the room. Prisca called him back, insisting that he greet Mike properly. Reluctantly, David returned and offered a hesitant greeting before quickly retreating to his room. After David left, Mike voiced his dissatisfaction to Prisca, criticizing her parenting skills. He accused David of being rude and disrespectful, a claim that shocked Prisca to her core. She knew her son to be kind and well-mannered, never receiving complaints about his behavior from others. Prisca defended David fiercely, explaining that children sometimes act out based on their emotions and that it didn't reflect on her parenting style. Michael's words stung, causing Prisca's mood to sour. Sensing her distress, Mike quickly apologized, assuring her he hadn't meant to upset her. Seeking to mend the rift, Mike leaned in to kiss Prisca, wrapping her in a tight embrace. However, despite his attempt at reconciliation, Prisca couldn't shake the unease that lingered in her heart. As she held onto Mike, doubts crept into her mind, planting seeds of uncertainty about their relationship. In the days that followed, Prisca found herself questioning Mike's behavior more and more. She observed his interactions with David with a critical eye, noting the subtle signs of tension that seemed to linger beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Ruby continued to be a source of support for Prisca. She listened empathetically as Prisca confided her concerns, offering gentle words of encouragement and understanding. One evening, as Prisca sat alone in her apartment, pondering about the future of her relationship with Mike, she received a text message from Ruby. "Hey Prisca, just checking in on you. How are you holding up?" The message read. Touched by Ruby's thoughtfulness, Prisca replied, pouring out her doubts and fears about Mike. "I don't know what to do, Ruby. I love him, but I just can't ignore the way he treats David," she confessed. Ruby responded swiftly, her words brimming with compassion and wisdom. "Prisca, you deserve someone who loves and respects both you and David. Don't settle for anything less." With Ruby's words echoing in her mind, Prisca made a decision that she knew she ought to. One day, as Prisca sat at her desk in the office, her boss summoned her for an urgent meeting regarding a strategy plan for a new client. He emphasized the importance of impressing the client and entrusted Prisca with the task. Determined to excel, Prisca assured her boss that she would deliver a stellar presentation and promptly headed to her office to begin her work. Prisca poured her heart and soul into crafting the perfect strategy plan. She worked tirelessly day and night, knowing that the success of the presentation was crucial not only for her career but also for her team and the company as a whole. One evening, while Prisca was fully engrossed in her work, her phone began to ring insistently. Lost in her concentration, she failed to notice the calls. Frustrated by the lack of response, Mike decided to pay Prisca a surprise visit. With a loud knock on the door, Prisca was jolted out of her focus. Opening the door, she was met with Mike's angry demeanor. He berated her for ignoring his calls and accusing her of prioritizing work over their relationship. Prisca tried to explain that she was busy with an important project, but Mike refused to listen, storming out in a fit of frustration. Feeling torn between her love for Mike and her dedication to her work, Prisca sought solace in the comforting presence of her friend, Ruby. Over cups of coffee, Prisca poured out her heart, sharing the details of her troubled relationship with Mike. Ruby listened intently, her brow furrowing with concern. She urged Prisca to stand up for herself and not tolerate being mistreated by Mike. "You deserve someone who respects you and your priorities. You deserve someone who supports your dream," Ruby insisted, her voice filled with conviction. However, Prisca's fear of losing Mike held her back. She couldn't bear the thought of being alone, and the idea of confronting Mike filled her with dread. Despite Ruby's words of encouragement, Prisca remained conflicted. As the conversation drew to a close, Prisca hesitantly broached the subject of babysitting David. She confessed her intention to spend the night at Mike's place and asked if Ruby could look after David. Ruby agreed, knowing that her friend's happiness was at stake. That night, Ruby helped Prisca get ready for Mike's place. Though her heart ached at the thought of Prisca sacrificing her own happiness for the sake of a troubled relationship. With a heavy heart, Ruby bid Prisca goodbye, silently praying that everything would turn out for the very best. As Prisca left for Mike's apartment, a sense of apprehension gnawed at her insides. Deep down, she knew that her relationship with Mike was far from perfect, but the fear of being alone clouded her judgment. The day of the presentation arrived, with Prisca feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. As she entered the boardroom, she was greeted with the sight of her colleagues and the representative from their client's company. With a deep breath, Prisca launched into her presentation, her voice steady and confident. With each slide, Prisca poured her heart into showcasing their strategic plan, her passion evident in every word she spoke. As the presentation drew to a close, the room erupted into an applause, the sound of approval echoing off the walls. Flushed with pride, Prisca returned to her office, her heart still racing from the adrenaline of the presentation. However, her moment of triumph was short-lived as a young man entered her office unannounced. Introducing himself as Tony, the representative from their client's company, he proceeded to critique Prisca's performance with an air of arrogance that left her taken aback. Despite his dismissive attitude, Prisca maintained her composure, choosing to ignore his condescending remarks. To her dismay, Prisca received a call from her boss shortly after Tony's departure, informing her that she would be collaborating with Tony on their next project. Her heart sank at the news, knowing that working with someone like Tony would be no easy feat. Later that evening, Prisca found herself confiding in Ruby, recounting the events of the day and expressing her frustration with Tony's attitude. Ruby listened empathetically, offering words of encouragement and support. "Maybe Tony just needs some time to warm up to you," Ruby suggested optimistically. "You never know, he might just surprise you." Despite Ruby's words of wisdom, Prisca couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the pit of her stomach. She knew that working with Tony would require a lot of patience and diplomacy. As the conversation shifted to a lighter topic, Ruby inquired about Mike, Prisca's boyfriend. With a forced smile, Prisca assured her that everything was fine and she was looking forward to spending the day with Mike tomorrow. However, deep down, Prisca couldn't shake the lingering doubts that had begun to plague her mind. With each passing day, the strain of balancing her personal and professional life weighed heavily on her shoulders, leaving her feeling torn and uncertain about her path. The following day dawned with an air of tension, lingering between Prisca and Mike. As they sat together, Mike broached the subject of their future together, expressing his desire to settle down soon. However, he mentioned his concern about where David would fit into in their plans, and it struck Prisca like a bolt of lightning. Feeling blindsided by Mike's insensitivity, Prisca struggled to contain her emotions. She reminded him that David was her son, her own child, her flesh and blood, and she couldn't simply cast him aside just to accommodate Mike's wishes. The realization that Mike couldn't fully accept her son cut Prisca to the core, leaving her feeling betrayed and alone. That night, as they lay side by side in bed, the silence between them spoke volumes. Prisca tossed and turned, her mind consumed by the thoughts of the future and the uncertainty that lay ahead. The next day, at work, Prisca sought solace in the familiar presence of Ruby, pouring out her heart about the troubled situation with Mike. Ruby, ever the supportive friend, encouraged Prisca to prioritize her son's well-being above everything. "David is your top priority, Prisca," Ruby reminded her. "Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." Charged by Ruby's words of encouragement, Prisca resolved to confront Tony about his unreasonable demands with meeting their work deadlines. Where Tony refused to let her leave work early, insisting on an all-nighter to meet their deadlines, Prisca knew she had to take a stand. With a sense of determination, Prisca informed Tony that she needed to leave for something very important, regardless of his objections. Tony relented, but proposed that they work through the night to catch up on their tasks. However, Prisca's mind was made up. As she rushed out of the office, she went straight to pick David from school. A wave of relief washed over her. She knew that she couldn't leave her son alone, especially in the light of the recent events. With a heavy heart, she explained to David that they would be spending the night at the office. Back at the office, Prisca's decision caught Tony off guard. He couldn't hide his surprise at seeing Prisca with David. Realizing for the first time ever that she was a mother, his initial shock gave way to a sense of understanding as he grasped the magnitude of Prisca's commitment to her son. Apologizing for his earlier demands, Tony acknowledged the sacrifices Prisca made to balance her work and family life. He vowed to support her in any way he could, recognizing her strength and determination even in the face of adversity. The following week, as Prisca met Tony at the office, she eagerly showcased the progress she had made over the weekend. Tony was genuinely impressed, offering sincere compliments for the very first time. Prisca felt a surge of pride at his approval, but quickly brushed off his inquiries about David, preferring to keep her personal life separate from work. With a sense of urgency, Prisca reminded Tony of her impending need to pick up her son from school. Tony nodded understandingly, and they delved into their work, focusing on the tasks at hand with renewed determination. Later that evening, Prisca and David returned home, where they were greeted by the unexpected presence of Mike. He had Prisca's spare key, and that was how he was able to have access to their house. Mike presented Prisca with a bouquet of flowers, a feeble attempt at reconciliation. However, Prisca remained steadfast in her resolve, refusing Mike's apology and asserting her need for space and time to think. As Mike left angrily, Prisca retreated to her room, the weight of her emotions pressing down on her shoulders. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she grappled with the pain of Mike's hurtful words and the realization that their relationship was now beyond repair. Prisca was scared of being alone, not to talk of starting all over. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, pulling Prisca from her thoughts. She opened it and was met by the comforting presence of Ruby and David. With a grateful smile, Prisca ushered David to his room before going back to pour out her heart to Ruby. Ruby listened empathetically, offering words of encouragement and support. Prisca, declared her intention to end things with Mike once and for all. Ruby shared in her friend's excitement, assuring Prisca that she was making the best decision for herself and for her child, David. The next day, Prisca summoned the courage to meet Mike in a nearby restaurant. As they sat across from each other, Prisca's heart weighed heavily with the weight of the impending goodbye. With a deep breath, she uttered the words she had been dreading, ending their relationship once and for all. In response, Mike lashed out, hurling hurtful insults at Prisca. He accused her of being a single mother and belittled her worth. He called her a second-hand lady and was confident that she would come back crawling to him. Prisca remained steadfast, refusing to dignify his words with a response. Quietly, she rose from the table, leaving Mike's harsh words behind her. She was determined to move forward. She returned home with a newfound sense of empowerment. Calling her carpenter, she arranged to have the doorknobs changed, serving as the final tie that bound her and Mike together. He wanted to cut all access from him, and that marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life. As time passed, Prisca threw herself into her work with renewed determination. She found solace and fulfillment in her career and in caring for her son. Tony, her colleague and partner, observed her unwavering dedication with admiration, constantly inspired by her ability to excel despite the challenges of single motherhood. One day, as Prisca and Tony sat together, their conversation veered towards personal matters. Tony, curious about David's father, gently broached the subject. Prisca, her heart heavy with memories, recounted the painful story of their separation and how she had faced the daunting task of raising David all by herself. Touched by Prisca's strength and resilience, Tony opened up about his own upbringing. He shared how he and his brother had been raised by their single mother after their dad had abandoned them during difficult times. Hearing Tony's story, Prisca felt a kinship with him, realizing that they shared a common bond forged through challenges. Tony's words of admiration and encouragement moved Prisca to tears, her emotions overwhelming her. For the first time in a long while, someone outside her close circle had acknowledged the challenges she faced as a single mother and praised her for her strength and perseverance. Gently wiping her tears away, Tony reassured Prisca of her worth, urging her not to settle for anything less than she deserved. His unexpected display of empathy and kindness touched Prisca deeply, opening her eyes to a new side of Tony that she had never seen before. The next day, Prisca excitedly shared her conversation with Tony with Ruby, her closest confidant. Ruby, equally impressed by Tony's newfound sensitivity, teased Prisca about the possibility of him being the perfect match for her. As fate would have it, when Prisca and Tony met again, Tony surprised her with a thoughtful gift for David. Prisca was deeply touched by his gesture, grateful for his kindness and consideration. For the first time, their conversations extended beyond work-related matters, allowing them to connect on a more personal level. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Prisca and Tony found themselves drawn to each other, forging a bond rooted in mutual respect and understanding. The day of the big presentation arrived, and Tony and Prisca stepped into the boardroom filled with important guests and executives. With nerves tingling, they delivered their pitch, with confidence and expertise, laying out their strategy with precision and passion. As they concluded their presentation, a hush fell over the room, anticipation hanging in the air. Then, to their relief and joy, the chairman rose from his seat, applauding their efforts, and with a smile, he commended the team for their impressive work and expressed his readiness to seal the deal. When the chairman inquired about the team leader, both Tony and Prisca hesitated for a moment, then in a display of mutual respect, they each credited the other, acknowledging the collaborative effort that had brought them success. The chairman nodded in approval, impressed by their humility and teamwork. After the meeting, Tony suggested celebrating their victory together, but Prisca declined, citing her need to be with her son. However, she agreed to let Tony meet her son, a decision that would change her life forever. In the days that followed, Tony immersed himself in Prisca and David's life, spending quality time with them and earning David's trust and affection. Prisca found herself opening up to Tony, sharing her fears and dreams with him, while Ruby cheered them on from the sidelines, confident in their blossoming relationship. As Prisca observed the bond forming between Tony and David, she couldn't help but marvel at the difference between Tony and Mike. David welcomed Tony with open arms, eagerly anticipating his visit and asking about him when he wasn't around. With Tony's gentle and caring demeanor, Prisca began to trust him more, allowing him to pick up David from school and become an integral part of their daily routine. As their relationship deepened, Tony took the initiative to introduce Prisca and David to his own family, eager to share his love and happiness with them. Tony's mother welcomed Prisca and David with open arms, treating them like her own family from the moment they met. Her warmth and acceptance eased Prisca's worries, reassuring her that she had found a man who truly cared for her and her son. In a whirlwind of joy and excitement, Tony proposed to Prisca, his eyes shining with love and devotion. Overwhelmed with happiness, Prisca tearfully accepted, knowing in her heart that she had found her soulmate. As they began planning their future together, Prisca made the decision to cut ties with Mike forever, blocking him from her social media and her life, and focusing on the love and happiness that surrounded her. Tony and Prisca got married and they embarked on a new chapter of their life, moving into a beautiful apartment with their son David. Tony legally adopted David as his own, cementing their bond as a family. In the months that followed, Prisca discovered she was pregnant, a joyous surprise that filled their hearts with even more love and excitement. Throughout her pregnancy, Tony stood by her side, supporting her every step of the way and eagerly anticipating the arrival of their new addiction. As they welcomed their baby girl into the world, surrounded by love and laughter, Prisca knew that she had found true happiness in the arms of the man who had shown her what it truly meant to be loved and cherished. And as they looked towards the future together, Prisca was filled with gratitude for the journey that had brought them to this moment, grateful for the love and support that had carried them through every trial and triumph. Tony was the happiest man alive. He took care of his family, making sure to provide everything they needed. Both Tony and Prisca excelled in their career, and they knew that this was their happily ever after. Prisca's story is one of resilience, love, and the importance of supportive relationship. Despite facing challenges as a single mother, she remained dedicated to her career and her son. With the support of her friend Ruby and Tony, Prisca finds strength and courage to overcome obstacles and pursue her dreams. Through her journey, we learn the value of perseverance, the transformative power of love, and the importance of surrounding oneself with supportive people. Prisca's stories serve as a reminder that with determination, resilience, and the support of loved ones, we can overcome any obstacle and find happiness and the fulfillment in our lives. Thanks for watching this captivating story on African stories and folktales. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories. Thank you.